When I arrived in England I thought I knew English. After I'd been here an hour I realized that I did not understand one word. In the first week I picked up a tolerable working knowledge of the language, and the next 7 years convinced me gradually but thoroughly that I would never know it really well, let alone perfectly. This is sad, my only consolation being that nobody speaks English perfectly. Remember that those 500 words an average Englishman uses are far from being the whole vocabulary of the language. You may learn another 500 and another 5,000 and yet another 50,000, and still you may come across a further 50,000 you have never heard of before, and nobody else either. If you live here long enough you will find out to your greatest amazement that the adjective nice is not the only adjective the language possesses. In spite of the fact that in the first 3 years you do not need to learn or use any other adjectives. You can say that the weather is nice, a restaurant is nice, Mr. So-and-so is nice, Mrs. So-and-so's clothes are nice, you had a nice time, and all this will be very nice. Then you have to decide on your accent. You will have your foreign accent all right, but many people like to mix it with something else. I knew a Polish too who had a strong Yiddish-Irish accent. People found it fascinating though slightly exaggerated. The easiest way to give the impression of having a good accent or no foreign accent at all is to hold an unlit pipe in your mouth, to mutter between your teeth and finish all your sentences with the question, "Isn't it?" People will not understand much, but they are accustomed to that and they will get a most excellent impression. I have known quite a number of foreigners who tried hard to acquire an Oxford accent. The advantage of this is that you give the idea of being permanently in the company of Oxford dons and lecturers on medieval numismatics. The disadvantage is that the permanent singing is rather a strain on your throat, and that it is a type of affection that even many English people find it hard to keep up incessantly. You may fall out of it, speak naturally, and then where are you? The Mayfair accent can be highly recommended, too. The advantages of Mayfair English are that it unites the affected air of the Oxford accent with the uncultured flavour of a half-educated professional hotel dancer. The most successful attempts, however, to put on a highly cultured air have been made on the polysyllabic lines. Many foreigners who have learned Latin and Greek in school discover with amazement and satisfaction that the English language has absorbed a huge amount of ancient Latin and Greek expressions, and they realize that it is much easier to learn these expressions than the much simpler English words, that these words as a rule are interminably long and make a simply superb impression when talking to the greengrocer, the porter and the insurance agent. Imagine, for instance, that the porter of the block of flats where you live remarks sharply that you must not put your dustbin out in front of your door before 7:30 a.m. Should you answer, "Please don't bully me?" A loud and tiresome argument may follow, and certainly the porter will be proved right, because you are sure to find a clause in your contract, small print, bottom of last page, that the porter is always right and you owe absolute allegiance and unconditional obedience to him. Should you answer, however, with these words, "I repudiate your petulant expostulations," the argument will be closed at once. The porter will be proud of having such a highly cultured man in the block, and from that day onwards you may, if you please, get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and hang your dustbin out of the window. But even in Curzon Street society, if you say, for instance, that you are a tough guy, they will consider you a vulgar, irritating and objectionable person. Should you declare, however, that you are an inquisitorial and peremptory Homo sapiens, they will have no idea what you mean, but they will feel in their bones that you must be something wonderful. When you know all the long words, it is advisable to start learning some of the short ones, too. You should be careful when using these endless words. An acquaintance of mine once was fortunate enough to discover the most impressive word nostalgia for backache, mistakenly, however, he declared in a large company. "I have such a nostalgia." "Oh, you want to go home to Nizhny Novgorod?" asked his most sympathetic hostess. "Not at all," he answered. "I just cannot sit down." Finally, there are two important points to remember. 1. Do not forget that it is much easier to write in English than to speak English, because you can write without a foreign accent. 2. In a bus and in other public places it is more advisable to speak softly in good German than to shout in abominable English. Anyway, this whole language business is not at all easy. After spending 8 years in this country, the other day I was told by a very kind lady, "But why do you complain? You really speak a most excellent accent without the slightest English."